One scrimmage and a week of practices left before the Jay McGillis spring game, and the offense has got things clicking. Going to talk about what they've got going, what the questions that we have, and everything in between.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. Today, we're going to look at the offensive side of the ball in the spring game. I have 3 segments just on the football team today. First, are going to be on the offense, and first 2 are going to be on the offense. We're going to look at things that we know. Second segment, things that we don't know and have questions about. And then I want to look at more generally around the program itself and the roster. And I have some questions about the roster I want to talk about in our final segment. So let's kick it off by talking about the offense and what we know after a couple weeks under Bill O'Brien. So Bill O'Brien, he brings in Will Lawing, a tight ends coach from the Patriots, to run his offense. You know, they bring back most of the same offensive staff that we saw in 2023, with Savon Huggins running the running backs, Matt Applebaum running the offensive line, and Darryl Wyatt running the wide receivers. You still have Rob Chudzinski floating around. Doug Marrone is helping out. You have a good staff working with them. So I was looking at this roster, and I'm looking at what we know. And the first thing that I know, watching these two scrimmages and seeing some practice reports from the scrimmages, practices I can't get to because I can't get to everyone. Today I was going to go, but it was snowing. Lovely Boston weather. It's April 4th, and we got, a nor'easter. And everything I've seen, the big thing that I know is that Boston College has a serviceable backup quarterback. And that backup quarterback is not Jacoby Robinson yet, though I think he may be in a year or two. It's Grayson James, the transfer quarterback from Florida International. Now, he played in 2022. He threw, as a true freshman, he played 11 games. He played a handful of games last year before he lost his job to another true freshman. Then transfers over. He is former high school teammates of Jerron Bradley, wide receiver on the roster. Watching him out there, it's abundantly clear to me that 2 things. One, he's better than any other quarterback they have on their roster. I think Jacoby Robinson might have a higher ceiling than James. I would go ahead and say he does. But he's still figuring things out. He's a redshirt freshman. He's 18, 19 years old. He hasn't played yet. He could get there by the end of this year. But I don't think Jacoby Robinson is higher than Grayson James. But James is better than him. He's better than Matt Reevy. And, we have not seen Jonathan Montague on campus yet. And, there's a couple other names that, Peter Delaportis is still there. He's going to be quarterback number 2. And why do I bring up Grayson James? Why is QB2 something I'm talking about? It's because he's going to take over for Tom. No, he's not going to take over for Thomas Castellanos. But it's important that you have a serviceable backup in case something happens, especially when you have a quarterback like Castellanos who plays, I don't want to say recklessly because he's not reckless, but he plays in a style that could easily get him hurt. You don't want your season to go off the rails because you have to put Robinson out there and he's never played before. You have a guy that could go out there and run this offense and move the sticks. I think Grayson James is going to be fine. He's a big dude. I like the size of him. He seems like a guy that would be a good fit for Bill O'Brien's system. Accuracy-wise, he's more accurate than any other quarterback that they have that's not Castellanos. Good decision. Haven't seen him make a ton of mistakes. He's not super mobile. I don't think I've seen him make many runs. But he's got a good arm. And I think that he's going to be a good one. So Grayson James will be your backup quarterback this year. And I think it's an important one to have. My second piece is that the wide receivers room is the deepest position on this team. I am absolutely sure of that at this point. Look at the talent that this team has. You are bringing back Lewis Bond, who, when Thomas Castellanos was all in one piece and hadn't been banged up, was electric. I go back to that Florida State game and the Louisville game. He made some big time catches, and it was only until Castellanos got banged up that we didn't see him get the ball as much. And he's coming back. You put in Jerron Bradley, who is, this podcast, we're the biggest fan of Bradley right now. I love what I've seen so far out of him. 6'5", huge dude with graceful moves. You got him in there. You bring in Jaden Skeet. I want to make sure that I even bring up Jaden Skeet because Jaden Skeet looks great. This kid looks like he's been on the team for a while now. Good receptions. They're gonna probably use him in the slot. I would imagine either him or Bond, and he can do a ton for you. And those are just your starting three. You brought in a transfer, Jaden McGowan. You have Nate Johnson. You have Reed Harris, Dino Tomlin. You have a ton of talent on this wide receivers room. You have three guys right now that I think could be some of the best wide receivers BC's had. Like putting together the best wide receivers room BC's ever had, top to bottom. Like you've had Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is better than anyone BC has, I think, right now. But you have three guys out there that could do a lot for you. I love it. I think that's great. I like the next thing that we know is that at least 4/5 of the offensive line is set. You have your center, Drew Kendall. You have your offensive tackle, Ozzie Trapilo. You have your other offensive tackle, Jude Bowery. You're moving Logan Taylor from tackle to guard. All of those should be fine. You have enough there that they're good. They're good. I like what you have. I'm not sure about depth, though. And that's more of a question that we have. And we'll get into that in a moment. But I like you're not going into this offseason like you did in 2022, where you lost Alec Lindstrom, Ben Petrula, Zion Johnson. You lost all of those guys and you had nothing. You're going in with four guys that have played. That's good. And you have a good offensive line coach that can do it as well. So I like the offensive line. That is set as well. Those are the things that we know. In the last little just quick nugget, you got a good running back stable too. I like what I've seen out of Trayshawn Ward. Kai Robichaux shouldn't have to do everything. And don't sleep on Alex Broom. Don't sleep on him. This dude, every practice I've been to, he's a tough tackle, and they're using him in a good way. So I want to make sure that I shout those guys out. Now, in our second segment, I have a few questions, though. Even watching scrimmages, even watching practices, what are some of the questions that still remain about BC's offense? I'll get into all that in just a moment. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you just subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good only through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA limited, available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider. I continue to tell you, if you've not been over to Eagle Insider yet, we have a ton of recruiting information. I have more coming. I have so much. You got to go check it out. It's going to be a busy weekend, too. Saturday is the last scrimmage, and then we have the spring game next week. You're going to want to know about all the things that are going on with recruiting because I think Bill O'Brien's doing a great job. We've actually had an episode earlier this week, too, talking about recruiting if you want to get all the deets. But if you want all the insider info, go to Eagle Insider. So, the offense. Bill O'Brien said at one of the press conferences last week that the offense has been the strength of the team, which we all knew going into spring. That was going to be the case. They're going to be stronger. They scored a lot of points last year, and when Thomas Castellanos had things going, you knew that the team could be in any game that they're in. So what are the big question marks? You have a new offensive coordinator. You have a head coach that's offensive minded, that's going to view things differently than what Jeff Hafley did, which is a good thing. But one of the big questions I still have, watching scrimmages, is how much designed running Thomas Castellanos is going to be allowed to do. Now, watching him in spring practices, I've said this before, it's clear that they're putting an emphasis in practice on trusting his arm more and making more throws and less getting himself out of the pocket and running and getting himself hit. That being said, O'Brien has also said he wants him to trust his legs too, because if there's runs out there for him, he wants to make sure he takes them. But my bigger question is, and we haven't seen it in practice yet, are more of those designed runs. Castellanos ran for 1,100 yards last year. Will he do that again this year? I don't think so. I think Bill O'Brien will have more at his disposal to run his offense, that he won't just rely on, run with Robichaux, run with Castellanos, run with Castellanos, run with Castellanos, run with Robichaux. He's got more variety there, and that's good because then you can keep Castellanos fresher and prevent those issues that we saw later in the season, right? So my biggest question is, how much is he going to let him run? I'm not sure. I think he's as I said, he puts such an emphasis on the plays he's calling right now, focusing more on him passing, that we haven't seen it, and we probably won't see what Castellanos does and what he will do until we get into the season. Like if you're watching the Jameson McGillis spring game next Saturday, don't expect, I don't really think you'll see many design runs. I think I'm also curious to see if Bill O'Brien will do what Jeff Hafley does. One of the things, if you've listened to our podcast during the Hafley years, I've always said was like Hafley was kind of like paranoid about things. Like he would never tell you up front about injuries. He would never tell you up front about changes he's thinking about. It was always guarded, and that's why the practices were closed. Like he didn't want the media to see it because he was afraid it was going to get out. I'm curious if O'Brien will do that, like a vanilla game plan, like Hafley always did during the spring games, or will he actually just let it go? Like, will you just do that? Will he be like, you know what, it doesn't really matter? That'll be something worth watching, right? Second question I had has to do with what we just talked about in that first segment. I said one of the strengths BC had is that they have 4 out of their 5 offensive linemen in good positions, and I think they're good. The fifth one I'm not going to knock him because I don't think it's the worst choice you can make. And I don't think it's a bad choice either. Like, again, when I say worst choice, that makes it sound like he's bad. I'm just curious, is he the right answer? Like, do the staff have enough trust in him? And that's the other guard position for Jack Conley. Now, many Boston College fans, if I say Jack Conley, will have like post-traumatic stress from 2022 when he struggled. They put him all over the place that year. Credit to him. I mean, like the poor guy, he was playing tackle, he was playing guard. Because of the mash unit that they had on the offensive line, the guy had to play a million different places. I thought Conley had a good year last year. He was put in a great position to succeed. He was a sixth offensive lineman. He played tight end. They moved him to number 44 by the end of the year. And I didn't think I thought he found his spot. I thought he found his niche. Now, my big question going into this year is if he's going to be a starting guard, are we going to get more 2023 where we were like, oh, Jack Conley's doing pretty good out there? Or is it go back to 2022 where it's like, oh, geez, he's struggling out there? And that's only something the staff can tell us, right? You, you know, at practice, I'm watching. We get to see it, but the one thing that you get is we're not in the stands, so I can't watch onto the offensive line and watch a guy get beaten by a defensive lineman. I'm at like sideline level, so it's hard to see who's getting beat where and when. But he's someone I'm just like, it's gonna be he's a question mark, right? Like, what is he gonna do? What is his ceiling now if he just sticks at guard and sticks at that one position? Will he be successful? I'd love to see him be successful. He's a great guy. He seems like a great teammate. So we'll just have to wait and see. And my final question about this offense as the spring kind of winds down is looking at that tight end position. I haven't gotten a good read at which tight end is going to be the starter, who's going to get the most snaps. I get the sense it's going to be Kamari Morales, the transfer from UNC, but Jeremiah Franklin's been out there a lot too with the ones. And I feel like we're going to see a different usage out of the tight ends than we saw under Halfley. You have a guy in Bill O'Brien who worked with the Patriots, and most recently it was with Hunter Henry, who's a very good tight end. And he was successful in an offense that was god awful for the Pats last year. So I'm curious how he utilizes this. It's a question I have. Like, are we going to be seeing two receiving tight ends? Are they going to move Jeremiah Franklin to more of a pass blocking tight end? I'm curious to see how he envisions this. It's hard to guess right now because it seems like they both are kind of battling it out at practice, which is a good thing, right? Like, you have enough talent that you can battle that out. But I look at Franklin, I look at Morales, and I still think that's a question mark heading into the offseason. Now, our final segment. I want to look at the roster. There's still some major question marks I have. And I'm going to talk about what those questions are, and we'll talk about what the answers could be and some of the things that maybe we still will just never know until, the summer starts. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. Folks, if you know me, you know I love Game Time. I've had such a great experience with them. I used them to get BC tickets last year, and I'm going to use them again to get tickets to concerts and shows this year. Because I love Game Time because of a few different things. First of all, when I go to a show, I'm a dad. I can barely get out of the house, but when I want to go to an event, I want to make sure my tickets are what I am expecting. I don't want bad seats. I don't want to see like partially viewed things. I want to see good stuff. And that is what Game Time does best. Their seat viewer makes it so easy. It takes all the guesswork out. I know exactly what I'm paying for. And with their all-in pricing, many times you know exactly what you're paying right away. There's no hidden fees. It's all together. It's super good. And then if there's, if you're the type of person where you're thinking like, oh, if these tickets drop prices, if I can afford to go to that, they tell you about it. You'll get push notifications like, hey, the Patriots game dropped 23%. Do you want to buy tickets? I love that. It makes it so easy to use. Game Time is the place to go. They have last minute deals. They've had everything. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEG. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. I know you're going to like it. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. wrapping things up, talking about spring football. And again, I will be there on Saturday for the final scrimmage before the Jay McGillis spring game, which is just another glorified scrimmage. But I'm excited to see and get some more info because I can give you guys the insider info that you guys can't because you can't get to the practices, right? So one of the things being there has helped me do is to visualize the roster, seeing how things are playing out. Like, oh, so this guy's been out. Seeing like Jalen Blackwell hanging around, knowing that he's not ready to play yet, but seeing Bryce Steele in a yellow penny being like, oh, he's getting back. He's back with the team. But there's still some roster questions I have that have yet to be answered, and this is what we're going to talk about here. The first one is the role of Cole Batson. Now, the two scrimmages I've watched, I have not seen Cole Batson a lot. I've seen a lot of Bug Jones. I've seen a lot of KP Price. I've seen Jalen Cheek playing some safety. I've seen Victor Nelson, but I haven't seen a lot of Cole Batson. And I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe he's been dinged up. The reason I want to say this is because college coaches are very protective of health information. If I ask them about injuries, most of the time they're not going to talk about it unless you see it on the field and it's something that's very clear. They're not going. They're just going to kind of go it. And he's been suited up when I've been there, so I'm not sure what's going on with him. He's been a starter for a couple of years. I'm wondering, if there's been a change in how the new staff feels about him. So he's one I've been watching. Another player that I think a lot of you have been catching on to that I have yet to figure out as well is wide receiver Joseph Griffin. Joseph Griffin has not been at practice. And, when you're at practice, as I said earlier, like the injured players, they're around. Like you see them, sometimes they're in the weight room. You can see them, like Caleb Jones, who hurt his knee last year. You see him everywhere, right? You've seen some of the other guys on crutches. You know who the hurt players are. Joseph Griffin hasn't been with them because I was wondering if he's hurt. I asked the staff, got no answer. I'm not sure what is going on with that. Is he hurt and he's just not there? Is something else? Is he like transferring? I don't know. His brother's there. His brother's been practicing. Joseph Griffin is a big one. And I wonder, like, is the addition of Jerron Bradley a big thing? Like, he basically does what Griffin can do, but clearly at a higher level. So I'm wondering if there's some piece of that going on. But the status of Joe Griffin is something I've been wondering about. And then on top of those players, some of the roster questions I have are kind of moving forward. The first one I have is during transfer portal season, there was one player that everyone knew about that just hasn't been on campus yet. And I've asked, I've asked, and have not got any updates. The last I had talked, and I believe it was after O'Brien took over, is the plan still that he's here? And the answer I got was yes, and it's not a big deal. And that's Cam Martinez. Cam Martinez was a defensive back from Ohio State that committed to Jeff Hafley at Ohio State, and then played a couple of seasons for the Buckeyes, and then decided to transfer over, but hasn't made it over yet. To me, it strikes me as maybe like an academic thing, like he maybe has to finish a class or something. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but you have a need in the safety position again, or cornerback. Will he be here to play? That has not been an answer because he's not been on campus yet. So Cameron Martinez and his status is a big question I have about that roster. And then to wrap things up, the big question I have too is we're about to hit another transfer portal period, which is crazy. It feels like we went from the winter where we had a transfer portal period. We're now in a transfer portal period for basketball, and hockey's about to start once the Frozen Four is over, and then we'll be back to football transfer portal. It's like 24/7 transfer portal talk. Players are going to enter the portal. And I just gave you a couple names of guys I'm just curious about. I'm not sure where they're at, and I'm not sure if they were transfer or not. But there's been guys that that I've not seen in practice that are maybe lower on the roster. There's other guys that have just been beaten out, and I'm wondering if they'll enter the transfer portal. Um, I I had to double check, but like Elijah Krasnovic, who we've never seen play yet. He came from IMG Academy, I think in 21. Um, Offensive lineman from Serbia. I don't think I've seen him in practice either. Like I look around. It's 100 guys out there, so it's hard, but it's like there's certain guys I'm like, haven't seen him yet. He's one. I've not seen him anywhere. Maybe there's guys like that where you just wonder, like maybe he's gonna be the guy that transfers, and there's gonna be, but it's not just the guys that are transferring out. You're gonna have guys transferring in as well, and that makes the question like, what positions do they need? I look at maybe like linebacker, right? With Bryce Steele, we don't know exactly when he'll be back. He's practicing ish, but he's not like fully there. Jalen Blackwell is out. Will that be a position they look at? Or defensive end? You have Neto Paula and you have Donovan Azaraku and Edward Kalengi, but I've seen a bunch of guys lower in the depth chart not practicing yet because they're banged up. Will that be a position? I have to imagine Bill O'Brien's going to be looking in the portal too. So that's a big question. Like, what will they be looking at? On Monday, we'll be back. We'll talk more, and maybe there'll be some basketball transfer news. There'll be recruiting stuff. I'll be talking about the practice and scrimmage on Saturday. Got a ton to talk about. Thank you all so much for listening. Again, follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 and give me 5 stars and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button too. It really does help us out. And we're the only Boston College podcast. I do this because I love the school. I'm a graduate just like you guys are, and I have the passion to talk about it and do it all the time. And I hope you guys enjoy it. If you have any ideas or anything like that, please feel free to shoot me an email. I love to hear from each and every one of you. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend, everyone. Hopefully the snow stays away. I'll see you all again on Monday for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.